everyone, and welcome to Interactive Futures. Hope you're having a good Saturday morning. My name's John Jordan, and I'm chairing the panel entitled "Are Video Games a Distraction or a Vocation?" So we're going to be talking about that for the next 45 minutes. Obviously, we can all. I've got a panel of kind of experts in the local game development scene, and we can talk about that amongst ourselves. That's great. But the real opportunity for this panel really is to get your questions answered. So if you have questions about, I guess, more to the side of are video games a vocation, i.e., is there a proper career there? Please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get those answered as much as possible. Before I introduce the panel, I guess I'll do a quick preamble just to kind of set the scene, I suppose. And I've been in the games industry now for over 20 years, and it has been surprising, to put it mildly, how much it has grown. So it was never a small industry, even when I joined. But over the last 20 years, the growth has been phenomenal. I mean, even the last year in particular, the games industry saw record growth. As an industry now, it's a global industry, and it generates $200 billion of revenue a year. So that's with a B, $200 billion a year. So it's an enormous industry in terms of kind of business and finance. It's also highly creative. It's also incredibly advanced in terms of technology. It's really pushing the boundaries in many aspects of computer science. So I guess I'm building up the vocational side of this. This is not a bedroom industry anymore, although some people still work in bedrooms. That's fine. I guess a lot of us are doing that this year. And the other thing to say is, for you in the local area of Leamington Spa, you really have a kind of a world-class opportunity, because not many people in the world have so many game developers in their local area. So over 2,000 people employed in the area, 50 companies, depending on exactly how geographically you kind of group Leamington Spa. So you do have this massive opportunity for people who are interested in games as a career, that you have these local companies. And I guess my kind of takeaway at the start of this, rather than specific advice, but people who are interested, that just look at the local companies and play their games and talk to them. And if you have a Twitter account, or if you have a YouTube or a Twitch, you should be playing the games of the companies in your local area and interacting with them. And that's kind of how you get your foot in the door. Obviously, things like qualifications are very important as well. But you have an opportunity, so please use it. Your other opportunity is to ask questions. So enough from me. Let's get our panelists introduced. So panelists, if you can just, Vicky, if you go first, if you just introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about what you do as a job, and a little bit about what your company does, and then we'll sort of take it from there.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a senior systems designer, and I work for Rebellion Developments. Recently, we released Zombie Army 4 Dead War. That was about a year ago. And we've also released titles such as Strange Brigade, the Sniper Elite franchise. And we've recently announced Evil Genius 2, which will be released, I think, next month, if I remember correctly. But my job as a designer is to make the gameplay mechanics and features that go into your games, and decide how things should work, how you should interact with things, and how things should interact with you. So yeah, that's what I do within the industry. I've been in the industry for about 13, 14 years now, in various design roles, level design, but I've also done production and QA testing as well.
Lovely, thank you. Harinder, do you want to give us your introduction?
Yeah, hi, I'm Harinder. I'm the Studio Operations Director at Sumo Leamington. Sumo Leamington, we've been going for about 2 years next month, so we haven't released anything yet, but we're working on lots of things internally at the minute, and I can't tell you unless you sign an NDA, and that's 3 letters that you will get used to hearing in this industry, NDA. Right. So Sumo Digital, we've been going for, I think, 17 years now. We're one of the largest independent games developer in Europe. We've got 8 locations in the UK, all doing different things. Recently, our Sheffield studio released Sackboy on the PS5. We work with most of the publishers and most partners. And actually, I should say my path actually into the industry was slightly different, because I'm an accountant by profession, so not the obvious artist, designer, or programmer, but found my path here, and about 13 years ago, and love it.
Good. Yeah, something that came up in one of the panels yesterday is, I guess when we think about careers in the games industry, it's very easy to get into the kind of mindset of there's programmers and there's artists, and that's sort of it. And clearly, as the industry has got more complex, there's all manner of kind of tasks that you would expect in any business, and other specialties as well. So it's not like you have to be either a great programmer or a great artist. There's loads of things you can do in the games industry. Okay, Alex.
Hello, my name's Alex Darby.
Hello.
I've been making video games since since the 80s, but I've only been getting paid to do it since the 1990s. I've sort of been programmer and designer all the way from junior up to running departments. I've started a couple of companies, sold one of them, run a master's course for a while. So I've done lots of different things, but mostly my day-to-day work is programming, or consulting on technical direction and stuff like that. So I run my own little company, which is freelance, and I do sort of work for hire work for people. Yeah, that's me.
Being very modest, I'm sure. But I guess it's kind of good that the other kind of companies, we've got a sort of bigger kind of established companies, and also we've seen over the last 10 years in particular, a flowering of kind of these small independents, which could be a couple of people, could be just experienced individuals. That there's no kind of one size fits all in gaming at all. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris McCarthy. I'm the recruitment manager at Third Kind Games in Leamington Spa, and Third Kind Games is an independent studio. This is our 5th year, and we've been launching recently games like Blankos, for example, which is the world's first global blockchain game, and we have other projects and programs in place for 2021. And I recruit all of their roles, entry-level programmers, senior and experienced programmers, technical artists, etc. Really enjoyed this week. I'm also a parent, and I'm quite proud. I've managed to get 3 of them to teenage age. So really interested in today's sessions and parents' questions. And they'd probably say my parental style is sort of Middle Ages. I think I'm actually sort of Victorian in my approach, and I'm really hoping to help people with a good Q&A session today. Thank you.
Lovely, good. Me and you, I know, could talk about blockchain games for a long time. It's one of my passions. Actually, some of my children are playing Blankos already, so it's kind of interesting. But I just kind of point that out because I was saying in my preamble that the industry is changing all the time, and certainly blockchain is one of these kind of a technology that games companies are starting to adopt now, and we've not really seen this at all before. And so, if you are interested in these sort of new technologies, the games industry is very the space where these things are kind of really worked out. So that kind of goes to show the advanced kind of technology. Okay, so I guess we have to kind of address the kind of question that we've been given, at least to start with. Are video games a distraction or a vocation? I don't really know how you're going to answer that, but Vicky, do you want to kind of give an answer to that? And I guess particularly focus on the vocation thing, I guess, a bit more than the distraction.
Okay, I can give it a little bit of both. I think because I'm a parent as well, and it's always something that other parents have asked me is like, oh, my kids should be doing this, should be doing that instead of playing. It's like, why? I think when they say when you hear the word distraction, there's automatically negative connotations about it. It's like they should be doing something else rather than gaming. But gaming is actually quite an educational tool in a lot of places. Even if the game isn't intended to be educational, kids learn a lot from it. It practice their reading, for example, if they're from a young age. It practice their motor skills with their hands and their coordination as well, if they're new to like third person or first person controls, for example. And distraction isn't always a bad thing either. I mean, in our current, with where we are at the moment, sometimes we do need that distraction. We need that a little bit of escapism, just to unrelax and to unwind and to just take our mind off the stress and the trouble of what's happening right now. And when it comes to as a vocation, I think, like you said there, the games industry is constantly growing, constantly evolving, and there's more and more roles and opportunities for people to get into within the games industry. So yeah, it's definitely a vocation, and as to whether it's a distraction or not, it's both, but in a good way, I believe.
Good, very balanced. Chris, I mean, you said you've got kind of three children. How have you kind of dealt with? I assume working in the industry, they just generally have more access to kind of games than they maybe other people would. Have you dealt with that sort of, you're spending too much time playing games, but dad works in the games industry sort of dilemma?
Well, I suppose, yeah, we'll come to that, because that's probably what causes most families meltdown in lockdown. Following on from Vicky's point, there's gaming itself, playing. Loads of evidence, Oxford University, that it's good for your mental health and well-being, and it certainly has for during lockdown. Children, when they're playing games, are learning a lot. You've got this basic format around, a challenge, you can achieve something and then you can be rewarded. And they can also talk to their friends online in a really nice, actually controlled virtual setup that is actually very, very safe. And it's been really nice to see that sort of, although it's remote, that connection that kids can generate between each other, all online and playing games. The timing aspect is something that, yeah, we all deal with in different ways. I'm now going with trying to get my kids to understand how it all works. So when the machine's getting really, really hot, time to let it have a rest. Let's go and have some exercise elsewhere. It'll work better if you let it recuperate, and try to use different tactics, flagging. In terms of the industry itself, clearly it is very, very vocational in certain areas. I would stress that. And I think, but sometimes people forget that larger studios and all studios still need IT support. They need HR, they need finance, they need marketing, they need sales. And these aren't your traditional vocational avenues into gaming. And we'll talk more about programming, etc. But there are these great opportunities to build a career in what is a traditional, accounting function. I like numbers, but actually do it in gaming and really build an exciting career in that sort of environment. Just continue on. I guess we have to kind of raise it because we raise otherwise. How do you deal with that dreaded term screen time? Is that something you treat as there's only 2 hours? I mean, maybe you're a bit older now, but do you only get an hour of screen time a day, or I mean, do you think even screen time as a concept is helpful in general? Obviously, people will have their own particular takes on it. Definitely, I think that's an element of there are the World Health Organization. Obviously, gaming can be perceived as being addicted when you get to a certain level. So controlling the time and on a game is really, really important, and sharing it amongst your kids as well. So it's fairly evenly spread through, and then just letting them have a break, because they get tired. And obviously we all see when they come off games in particular, you can get a lot of angst and just anger because you've taken them off the game. So it's building up to that time and getting them into the habit. A really good thing to do is not to forget to distract children with other challenges, other games. You can play Sudoku, chess. Use that other additional time for some other great challenges that they can do. It'll work really, really well in terms of distracting them.
Yeah. And I guess, certainly my kids are rather young, but I guess I kind of find there's some games that are a bit sort of mindless. So there might be kind of these kind of hyper casual games on phones which they can play for hours, but they're it's basically the distraction side of things. And then there's some games more like the Minecraft sort of thing, which has a, I wouldn't argue too much there's this kind of educational benefit, but clearly they're doing something a bit more interactive, and they're building things, and they're potentially playing, as you say, kind of with their friends or their siblings, so the different sorts of games as well, and you would probably want to take that into account. So we started to have a few questions, which is great. So Alex, I'm going to throw this one to you. Okay. So we have an 8-year-old asking to get into programming on an iPad. Rather specific. You're not an 8-year-old, but maybe you've done programming on an iPad. I think there are some languages there. There's one called Swift, I think. But do you want to give some advice generally about people who are interested in programming who are, on iPads or other devices?
Well, the problem with iPads for learning to program is that they're a closed system run by Apple, right? So you can't really program on an iPad. Like, you can get various things from the App Store that will let you learn to program in a sort of controlled environment, but you're fundamentally hamstrung from the point of view of using that technology like you would a PC or a Mac or like a Raspberry Pi. Like if you want to learn to program and you don't have a lot of money spare, you can get a thing called a Pi. Is it called a Pi Zero? No, it's like a tiny little computer. It's like less than £100, and it's got HDMI, a mouse and a keyboard. You plug it into your TV, and that comes with like an operating system on it that's got stuff that sort of teaches you how to interact with computers in the way people used to in the olden days, like when you had to type stuff to make them work. And that by itself will sort of get you into the worldview that you need for programming. There are tons of resources for learning to program on the internet, but sadly, like if you're on an iPad, the sort of things that you'll be able to do, there's like Lego Mindstorms. I think you can get, oh my God, what's it called? MIT do a programming language that's made of like visual blocks that kids learn at school. Scratch, it's called. You used to be able to get that for the iPad. I'm not 100% sure if you still can. And so sadly, the iPad is sort of not the best platform for learning to program on, ironically, given that it's one of the most prevalent devices. But yeah, there might be some. Honestly, when my kid wants to do that sort of thing, I just give him a laptop and sort of get him on with it. Like, obviously, not everybody's got those.
No one has that.
But yeah, the best way is definitely. There are plenty of good books as well, but Scratch is a good place to start. And to be honest, schools are doing it these days. So like you start, most schools start like in the upper end of primary. So like years 5 and 6, they'll be doing Scratch programming or similar. And then certainly by the time you're in year 7, you should be doing that at school.
I think you're right. There are a lot of resources out there. I guess the difficult thing, an 8-year-old is quite kind of young to be learning to it depends what kind of what programming an 8-year-old can do that kind of makes sense. Because I say there is this thing called Swift on the iPad, which I years ago messed around with a little bit. That may be a bit too advanced for an 8-year-old. It was too advanced for me, but to be honest, but that may be me. But there are these, as you say, there are these kind of block-based things or visual programming, and I know there are on the educational side. There are some sort of packages like that have these kind of very simple way of sometimes moving arrows around to kind of move things around, which is very basic programming. But I guess with all these things, if you've got an iPad, have a look to see what free resources are there, and if your 8-year-old is really getting into it, then maybe that's the time to look at something that can take them to the next level. But I guess an iPad's a good way of gauging whether they actually have, because lots of children say that they're interested in making games, but actually when they realise it's quite hard, obviously it's more fun to play them.
Just on that as well.
Yeah, go for it.
So just to say that there's a great book called How to Raise a Tech Genius. It's been in collaboration with the Digital Schoolhouse, and it's about having that technical brain and bringing that out a little bit more, but it's all very much without a screen as well. So it's quite interesting, and maybe at that age, if he with not having access to an actual laptop may be the case, it might be something that can help bring that along a bit.
So what was it? Can you say that name of the book again? So
How to Raise a Tech Genius.
How to Raise a Tech Genius. Cool. I should look at that as well. So that's good. Good. And as Alex pointed out, there is the Raspberry Pi, and there's a version of that called Kano, which is specifically designed. And that actually has some quite kind of simple kind of programming. Basically you have to kind of, a bit like Alex was saying, the old-fashioned way, you have to actually kind of program it to get the games to work. So that kind of gives you quite a good entry level, I've found anyway. Now we have a very specific question. I don't know if anyone has read a book called Lost in a Good Game by Peter Etchells. I haven't, so I can't comment on it. I'm assuming probably no one has. Unfortunately, Benedict, we don't know. We don't know this. If you found it a good read, excellent. Maybe other people want to look at Lost in a Good Game. Right, so another question from Sarah, parent of teenage kids in Leamington. Do any local companies offer structured work experience placements? I guess a bit difficult at the moment, but can anyone give any advice on that?
Yeah, I think it is difficult. It is difficult. Certainly we have in the past, and it's something that we encourage. I think the importance of that is actually making sure from attracting children at the right age to realise that, there is a viable career here, right? There definitely is, and actually that whole understanding of seeing it in a different light. And I know certainly in the past we've even hosted the Scouts coming in, and it's actually, it's actually really nice for us, because sometimes going back and seeing it through their eyes and walking into a dev studio for the first time, there's something really special about that. One of the problems that a lot of us have is that, like we said, a lot of the stuff that we're working on is undisclosed. So we do have, particularly if we're working with partners, we can't bring people in, unfortunately. But it is something that we're looking at more of, and it is something that certainly Sumo have done and will continue to do. So in a world where we are allowed to step into the studio, you should definitely get in touch with us, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Good. Anyone else? Chris, got anything?
Yeah, what I'd add on that is safeguarding. You've always got to be careful about safeguarding, with kids from 12 to 18. And as Alex said, that's a great chance to start people, working with the school, learning to program, developing things at home. What surprised me is there are actually, when you get to graduate, and there's no apprenticeships in gaming. I've checked with colleges, and surely the whole of British industry, actually, apprenticeships have declined, over the last 8 years or so. There's not enough of an uptake. Gaming, where it is today, with the staff shortages are going to be phenomenal. So collectively, the colleges and the local gaming organisations, we've got to get some structure together to surely get some apprenticeships going for 18-year-olds, upwards, to see what roles they can fulfil in gaming. The opportunities there's thousands of jobs, but there is currently, I don't believe, any sort of mechanism in place. Schools, as we know, are a bit limited on resources, so everything that everyone can do to support school, computers. A friend of mine, Gary Harvey, has been giving schools computers. We really have to start to push this along, I think, and really drive ourselves more in these current times as well.
Actually, I did a panel yesterday, and there were a couple. There was Creative Alliance, which do apprenticeships. I'm not quite sure exactly what sort of scale they do, and also Next Gen Skills Academy, which is more on the special effects side, but also moving into gaming. So I think there is some stuff with apprenticeships, but clearly a lot more could be done.
It's being more structured, though, isn't it? Really, that's having something a little bit more structured, where it's where there is this path into really moving into a viable career. And I'm with you, Chris. There isn't enough at the minute. I think we've certainly seen that from a university moving into, and how we've got an academy that actually helps drive that from university into different roles. But that bit from 18, not everybody wants to go to university or is cut out to go to university, and we need to be accepted. We're accepting that we should be. It's fine. It just needs to make sure, you're right, the shortage in talent is going to be a problem for all of us. So whatever we can do to encourage that, we need to.
No, I don't think there's any game developer in the world that isn't hiring at the moment. which is kind of so we got a good question here which kind of plays into this. I'm going to throw this one to you, Vicky. So Martin says he's a parent of an aspiring game developer hoping to go to uni in the autumn. Martin's very supportive of the career path, but is obviously a bit worried that if he fails to get a job in gaming after university, or decides that he wants to switch his career, are those skills going to be transferable? Done.
Absolutely, and I can relate. When I decided I wanted to make games, I thought the only avenue available to me was as a games programmer. So I did college and university focusing on programming and technology. So I did 4 years at Liverpool John Moores studying computer games technology, which was predominantly programming with a little bit of art and animation and audio interspersed, which kind of opened my eyes to the actual range of vocations and jobs that were in the industry. And after I graduated, I applied to dozens and dozens of companies and went to loads of interviews, trying to get into the industry as a junior programmer, and I got nowhere. And so, at that time I was like, what can I do? And then I actually sat back and thought, okay, well, I know there are other jobs in the industry. And then I started looking at design a bit more. So that's when I thought, okay, I'm going to take a year, work in QA for a year, which was great experience as well. But alongside that, I looked a bit more on what it was like to be a designer, and started looking online, getting resources, playing around with toolkits that came with games. Like Neverwinter Nights, for example, came with its own free level editor. With the game, for example, I was playing around with that, and as well as the name's gone out of my head that comes with that's on Steam for like Left 4 Dead and
it's Source, is it?
That's it, Source. That's right. And that's how I got in the industry, and actually found that I enjoyed designing. But what I learned studying programming has actually helped me be more technical as a designer. So that's lent itself well in being a systems designer. So if you find that your kid is going through university, has spent a lot of time and the effort and energy studying something, and realize it's either not for them, or they want to try something else, that what they have learned is definitely going to come in handy across any job within any job within the game industry or elsewhere. For example, I know a lot of other graduates from my course that they spent the same course as me, did the same modules and everything, but they didn't go into the game industry. They worked in other industries as well, and that's definitely helped them on those career paths as well.
Yeah, it's a very good, I think it's a very sort of encouraging story. I guess particularly, I think for the very sort of formal roles in games, that, you know, as I say, like the junior programmer or the junior artist, because they're kind of formal roles, those are almost kind of the most competitive, because, you know, the developers have so many people applying. You know, it's very hard to get in there no matter how good you are. But I think the ability to kind of show you're engaged in the games industry, you can, you know, I guess QA is the traditional, games testing has always been the traditional sort of entry level kind of position, because it makes you realize that being in the games industry isn't playing games all the time, and if it is playing games all the time, they're really rubbish games that aren't working yet, and you have to find the bugs and report them back, and that's quite a hard thing to do. So that's not a fun job, really.
But QA is even like a valid job role
Yeah.
in itself within the industry, and is probably one of the most important roles with the industry. I mean, I don't know, I couldn't do my job without a good QA team behind me to show me where I've gone wrong, or any bugs to help me fix what I'm working on. So it's that even then, as well, is some people look at it as a good entry, but you shouldn't discount it's also a very valid job role as well, and really important one too.
And also similarly, community support is something that's grown massively in the last kind of 5 years, and that's, you know, that's quite a soft skill. You have to know a lot about games, but you have to kind of deal with people and kind of, you know, help them when things have gone wrong, when they can be a bit kind of stressed. But, you know, if game developers don't support their audiences, then the players go and play something else. So that's kind of key to the kind of company kind of surviving, making money. Alex, do you want to talk a little bit about? Yes,
No,
you're raising your hand.
Weigh in on this because like obviously I used to teach a master's course, and the reason I got involved in sort of tertiary education for games is that I felt like I did a straight, very much like Vicky, I did a straight, well actually mine was completely computer science. There was no video game technology on it. I won't bore you with my life story, but I felt my degree didn't really prepare me particularly well, even though it was from a good university, quote unquote, you know, and had all of this stuff that was supposedly set you up for being a programmer. I didn't even realize, well, so I mean, for some extra context, I learned to program in the days when the SNES and the Mega Drive were still around, right? And so I assumed video games were something I wouldn't be able to do because that was all done in assembler language. And like we never were taught that at university, so I assumed I'd be working for Microsoft or something. So by pure fluke, one of my tutors said, "Oh, I've got a friend who works at Gremlin, who, you know, they're now defunct. They might even be people from Gremlin at Sumo because they were based in Sheffield." But anyway, so I suddenly realized this was just after the PlayStation came out. Blah 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 blah. What's the point I'm trying to make here? Education, yeah. So anyway, so I felt like that set me up. It didn't set me up well. Like it taught me to program, but it didn't teach me how to do anything as a programmer. If you see what I mean. I think that's a fundamental problem with almost all degree courses still, is that they're very much, a lot of them are trapped in an academic box. Like, so that's one problem. But again, you still like, here's the problem is that what you want in the game industry, you want T-shaped individuals, right? Where this is the breadth of the person's experience, like knowing how to communicate with people, how to fit in a group, how to compromise, how to, you know, take responsibility for stuff. And this vertical bit is their personal skills and deep knowledge. Now, university gives you some of this, but it gives you next to nothing of that. It teaches you how to drink and hang out with your friends and, like, you know, that's useful, fun stuff, and how to manage money and all those kinds of things, right? So I'm not in any way trying to say university is bad. But like the problem is there's a disconnect, right, between the what you learn in an academic context and what you then go on to do as your job, right? So that's why I got involved in academia. And so the course I helped make was set up to take people who'd already got a regular degree and make them video game industry ready, and it basically is entirely focused on that breadth bit, right? So again, I'm not trying to sell that course. So, but the point is, so when we were doing the research for this course, I promise I will make a point and say, when we were doing the research for this course, we did a huge swathe of research, because obviously you can't just magic a university course out of thin air. You have to prove that there's a need for it, you know, that the people who will want to take the course, etc., etc. So and this was in 2011, right? So at the time, there were 138 courses in the UK available through UCAS, which had video games in their title. Of those 138, there were 108 which had game design in the title, right? So the point I'm getting to is this question, the answer to this question that Martin's asked is it depends massively, like what the course is that their kid's going to do. Like, so all degrees will teach you some useful life skills, right? But when I went to university, it was basically a free 3-year holiday on the taxpayer. Like me, I've paid for my university. Like I might sound like some sort of, anyway, never mind. But the point was, you didn't have to pay your fees, right? There was no fees. There were, student loans only came in when I was in my 3rd year or something. So the people still had grants and whatever. So there was no real negative to going to university if you were lucky enough to have the opportunity to do that, right? So now there are 108 courses, and probably more by now, in the UK, right? So if we assume those 108 video game design courses are churning out 10 people per year into the industry, that's over 1,000 people every year looking for game design jobs, right? So there is a danger, and a lot of these courses are basically, without wanting to be, that universities are just basically doing bums on seat courses with games in the title, because they want people to go there and give them £10,000 a year to study. And a lot of these courses are terrible. They don't teach you anything useful, and you will come out of it 30 grand in debt, plus whatever it costs you to live, and not necessarily have any more chance of getting into the game industry really than you had before, right? So there are systems in place to help you choose good courses. There's a thing called the creative skill set tick. Is that right, Harinder? Yeah. And so you can basically, there's a handful of courses, 30 or so, that have been approved, quote unquote, by the industry and vetted to say this will teach you what you need to know. So you should definitely make sure that if your kid wants to do that, that they are taking one of those courses and not just like any old course with game in the title. Like anything like fine art, maths, physics, computer science, engineering, accountancy, like anything like that, there are jobs for people doing those sort of things. Business management, anything like that, they're completely transferable skills. Like my advice would always be, if your kid's into something, or you are as a human into something, then do the least vocational version of that you can, right? Because then you're likely to have a more general spread of stuff involved in it. So it's hard to know, right? I think, and it's very natural for people to be nervous about putting all that money and getting into debt for something that then isn't going to get them anywhere. And everything that Vicky said is absolutely true still. There is always a way, and there are plenty of other roles, but you just need to be careful that you don't pay a lot of money to put yourself in a massively oversubscribed box. Is what
I guess more generally, the kind of university education is going through something of a kind of disruption in terms of how it's delivered, and there's a lot of kind of I guess uncertainty around that. I kind of agree. I mean, I over the years have gone to a few of these kind of university and done some accreditation as well, and then there is this kind of wide scale. So I think I guess it comes back to our question of distraction and vocation. Partly there's so many courses with computer games in the title because there's so many people who love computer games and love the idea of having a career in the computer games industry. But that doesn't mean that all the courses are necessarily gonna help you very much. And lots of graduates are being generated who not all of them are going to get into the industry. So I guess there is a word of caution there to be looking at what the university is, what the track record is of the course, how long has it been going. I guess until a course has actually graduated its first set of students, that gives some sort of kind of a idea that the course has longevity, and you can kind of see you can ask how many of those students did get jobs, or you can kind of start to see links with industry. I think is a very good one as well, isn't it? I think if industry is prepared to give up some of their time and resources to be integrated to some degree with a university course, and that suggests that they're giving it some sort of validation at least. I mean, Chris, do you want to talk about that from your recruitment kind of hat on, what kind of courses you work with and how you kind of try and bridge that gap?
Okay. On that vocational piece, and because some of the kids who've asked questions are younger, and some of the courses and panels from yesterday and the day before have got really good ideas around 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds, how to get into programming and to support it. And from a graduate perspective, yes, we pick obviously our local universities: Warwick, Coventry, BCU. They're doing a great job. And then beyond that, you look at organisations at universities like Staffordshire, Hull, Abertay, Liverpool. There are some really good centres of excellence for programming and gaming across that whole suite of universities across the UK, because you're right, you know, they do seem to have their primary goal being bringing people in to do a degree. My own son, who's coming up to choosing, you know, degrees, asked last year, do I need to go to university? And that's a really good point. You know, I think gaming has this advantage that you can be vocational, really drive yourself, understanding gaming's, and when you're 18, get a job. If you're really, really good, we will happily interview somebody at 18 who's an outstanding programmer, for example, technical artist. Sorry, you won't be a technical artist at that level, but it is going to be, you know, you have to be exceptional. And with graduates, we're finding we're interviewing a lot of people who love gaming, but actually haven't got the skills we need for work, and that's where the difference lies. So I hope that helps.
Now, I think the one good thing, one of the many good things about the games industry, but one of them is you know, you do have these, you know, extremely bright people who have come from the best universities in the world, but equally you have people with no formal qualifications at all, and they're not all like self-made geniuses sort of thing. You know, some of them are just very kind of committed to what they do, and they found something that they're great at, and they kind of build up their experience that way. I think unlike maybe some industries have a very kind of formalized setting, I think the games industry is very much on the candidate and what they can bring, you know, to the role sort of thing. And because it is a creative industry, if you can show you're, you know, very creative, you know, got the kind of concept art and all that sort of stuff, you know, it's very much open. So we've got 10 minutes left. So if you do have questions, please, this is your final opportunity to get those answered. There's one thing I did want to talk a little bit about. And I guess often when kind of children are saying, oh, I want to kind of work in games, they in their head they kind of see themselves as the kind of the, I want to be the game designer. And I guess maybe things like Minecraft and Roblox have sort of encouraged that, because in there you're kind of making, you know, you're sort of making little games. Clearly this is what you're doing, but and clearly there are people whose job title is game designer in the games industry, but there is obviously a massive divide. I mean, Vicky was a game designer but kind of came at it from a weird angle, and I just kind of wonder if there's advice that you would give to sort of parents and even children about what the game designer role is, and what skills they actually need to do that as a role. Because I've found personally that seems to be the you know, the hardest role to get, particularly if you're inexperienced. Harinder, do you want to leave?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I think it's the hardest role to get in, and it's probably the hardest role to have, because everybody thinks they're a designer as well, so everyone's telling you and has an opinion about what you're doing. But design as a whole, certainly from the teams that we recruit, I don't think Vicky's got that much of a different line into it. We certainly have some of the best designers I've seen have come from a very technical background, and with that, you know, the way that they view things and the way that they interact with programmers and have that understanding about what it actually takes, because it's not just right, this is how I want it to be, and these are the, you know, I need this to do this and this, you know, it's them working with the engineering team to make sure that that can be a reality. And there's so many different roles within design in itself. You know, there is gameplay, there is level design, there is all, you know, there's system design, there's monetization design, and they all take different skills. And it's not just one degree, one person fits all of those, because it's different. You know, with monetization, you know, we go to Warwick University and go and speak to people that have done economics degrees or, you know, maths degrees to come and look at that, because it's a very different. I kind of describe it as, you know, the creative designer is more about, this is, you know, they've got those great image of what it's going to be, and then the monetization person's there saying, you know, make money through this way, let's do this. So, you know, it's a whole, there's so many different sides to it, I think, and also depending on the type of games you're actually making as well, because, you know, for us in Sumo Leamington, it's games as a service, so that whole understanding of what free-to-play games actually mean, and, you know, the fact that there isn't, you know, it's not about your whole concept in here, you know, it's about your minimum viable product, and, you know, the bells and whistles can wait, or maybe they don't even matter actually when we get there. So it's a different mindset. So it is really about understanding about where you actually fit into that. And what I would say is, for a lot of people, is actually go and research what design really is, you know, and go and speak to different designers, go and speak to all these different people that have got these different job titles, and just say, what do you do? What do you do? What does that really mean? You know, and that's actually, I think you're going to get a lot more depth of knowledge into what that actually means and where you fit into that ultimately, because it's not just games design. I'm with Alex a lot with some of the degree courses. I actually agree with him. So when we talk about games design, you know, just it's not enough. And those T-shaped candidates, we talk about T-shaped candidates a lot, you know, and how they fit in. So yeah, I think it's such a huge role that you need to go and do your own research to see where you fit into design, if that's what you really want. Because what you might find is thinking you want design, once you go and do your research, what is design really? It might be something you might be fitting in somewhere else actually.
Yeah. Vicky, do you want to come on that? I mean, you've mentioned a bit of it before. But...
Yeah, no, I completely agree that the design is such a broad spectrum, and you do need people from like different experiences, different backgrounds to fulfill those different roles. So me coming from a technical background, systems works well for me because I can see how things work mechanically and technically, and I can talk with my code team and the programmers to get that design through to them. Yet you tell me to work on a level. I mean, I did start off doing level design, but if I went to look into it now, I'm not at the level I used to be anymore, and I'm certainly not at the level that some of the level designers I work with who are more creatively minded. A lot of them actually study architecture, for example, to make sure that buildings are the right scale, to try and attract your eye and draw it in the right direction, that kind of thing. And yeah, and again, depending on the studio, depends on the variety of design roles they need. So for us, for example, we do first person, third person action shooter titles, for example. So level design is a heavy design role in our studio, systems design to make sure that the mechanics and the interactive elements are working. We also have combat design to make sure that that feels right and that feels good. We have narrative design. For example, you've got people with speaking roles in the game, for example. So you have somebody focusing on concentrating on that to make sure that the language comes across well and it's suitable for the style of the game, the time and the date era of the game, because Sniper Elite is based around World War II, for example. But yeah, but in other games, the studios I've worked for, there are like, you do have your monetization, your economy designers, you have PvP designers as well, if you have a PvP heavy game, to make sure that's as balanced as possible. And yeah, like Harinder said, it's worth looking into what possible design roles you are, if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, and asking people what is it they actually do as part of those roles.
Cool. So we have a few more questions in. So Martin asks, can Alex repeat the name of the place where you can look up the best gaming courses, please?
I will Google it now and get back to you.
Okay, good.
I'll post it in the question chat thing.
Okay, and I would say I think all of us are on the messaging system of the conference, aren't we? So if people have specific kind of queries, they can. I'm sure we'll all be happy to reply to those via the messaging system. So 2 more questions. I don't know. See if we can get them done quickly. Is video production a way in? I'm not quite sure what that means. Producing videos, I suppose. Anyone got a quick overview on video? I mean, obviously, games do have a lot of video production. So I guess yes. Anyone?
It's a very important role. It is. Yep. Whether it's a way in, I'm not sure. I mean, lots of people start doing other things and then come into production because it's about managing the whole life cycle of the game, right? And actually looking at the day-to-day project management of it. Is that a way in? I don't know.
I mean, I guess a lot of games companies use kind of a third-party video production. You'd have to be quite big, wouldn't you, to have an in-house video production team?
Yeah, you have to be massive. There are loads of companies that specialize in outsourced stuff. So I was on a panel for something last week where there was somebody from a company in Wolverhampton, and that's all they do is they do game trailers for big AAA companies like Activision and people like that. And they do like real-time animated stuff. They get sent all the game assets and they animate it all and then produce a real-time trailer just literally for the release video. So, I mean, it cool. is, but it's not like
it's a bit different.
Have to hunt around to find the place to do it.
Okay, can we just sneak this one very quickly? Alan asks, what about parents looking for a change of direction and may want to enter the industry? That's flipping on its head. Anyone got any quick advice for a parent? Oh, Alex,
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you've got skills that fit in, like at the moment there is a massive skill shortage in the video game industry. We're looking for the things that are easiest to recruit for production, art, video, and programming, really. So like if you've got transferable skills from an adjacent industry, like you've been programming, for example, traffic lights, or like checkout tills at Sainsbury's, anything like that, where it's the same kind of programming, like technical stuff in an embedded system that isn't just, or even if it's just like writing Word, you should still, if you think you want to do video games, apply. Production, like any sort of project management, like I've found that most of the best project managers I've worked with, no disrespect to everybody else, is that other people have come from other industries, like because the thing with the video game industry is, like, although it is growing and it's got lots of money and there's lots of jobs and stuff, like a lot of people come up through these paths from inside, and so obviously you only know what you know, right, when you've come up through that, so you can never think outside the box if you've only ever been in the box, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, so a friend of mine, Steve, who Herinda knows well, as Steve Stops, is like amazing producer, and he comes from, like, he used to work in finance in London, and then he works as project manager for, like, I don't know what, like all sorts of weird things, government agencies and whatever, and then he came into the game industry, and he's amazing as a producer. So I mean, yeah, there are, sorry.
I was going to say, I'm just going to put my hands up saying I made that change 13 years ago. I've worked in financial services before coming to the games industry. Didn't realise this was where I was supposed to be, is how I always describe it. So it was my practice interview as well. It's not really the job that I wanted. But then, as soon as I got there, I realised this is the place that I wanted to be. And, with having a finance background, there's so many opportunities within the industry. And you should reach out. That's all I say. I think the one thing about people in the industry, they're very welcoming for advice. So if there's anything that you want to know, obviously either via LinkedIn, most of us are on LinkedIn, or via the platform, you should just reach out to anybody that you think has a role where you could see yourself being, I suppose, to go and understand a little bit more about it.
Well, I think that's a great summation. I think we will leave it there. Thank you very much to my experts for your expertise. Thanks for the questions. I hope we helped answer some of them, or at least give you some pointers in the right direction. And as I say, we kind of reach out to us on the messaging platform. But thanks very much, panelists. Did a great job, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it too. See you.